Dear viewers, your troubles may be out of sight during the holiday season, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Not all Christmases may be white. The author. The holiday season on the railway was the busiest season of all. With so much commercialism, packages being passed around from across the world filled the yards to the brim. Which certainly didn't help the fact they couldn't hold as much freight right now. Ash's stunt under the second layer of the yards had left quite the impact, and it needed repairs. Frank and Ash were waiting for a supporting beam to be fitted when Spark came rolling into the yards. "Shunter!" he shouted. "Take these cars away!" Frank explained, "We can't hold any more freight right now. Can't you see how wrecked this place is?" "Doesn't matter! I need these cars moved now!" "We can't—" "You can!" "No, I don't care!" Ash interrupted. "Can you both shut up? Just take these cars into the sidings beside the shed and rest there." The two engines stared at each other. "Fine," Spark scoffed. Frank tried to restart their conversation with Ash. "So, where should the Christmas tree go?" "We know it looks good at the sheds from last time, but the turntable broke trying to get in place." "Christ, Spark, what the hell's gotten into you? Take your trucks and leave!" Spark tried to respond, but was cut off, so he remained silent. He rolled off as Ash yelled at him until he was out of sight. Spark brought his cars to the sidings and rested unhappily in the sheds. During the holiday rush, tons of goods and supplies are loaded into a long, heavy train known by the railwaymen as the Parcel Passer. It was a long-distance run from Little Nowhere to the other railways, where it would be separated and taken even further on shorter consists. Now, normally this train would be hauled by a loaner engine, something much bigger than the engines of Little Nowhere. But not this year. As Spark switched his cars onto the consist, one of the railway's inspectors ran into him. "Jones has fallen over! We need another engine to take the train!" Indeed, when Spark came to couple up, an engine much larger than him was laying on his side, swearing indignantly. Once coupled up, Spark was given the all-clear to move ahead. His wheels slipped and slid on the wet rails, but as soon as he started to gain speed, it was smooth sailing. Spark flew down the main line as his firebox roared, lighting up the ground aside as he passed. Every ounce of steam was funneled into moving forwards, keeping speed and keeping to time. Everything was smooth sailing till his stoker looked back and saw a bright light in the distance. "Stop the train!" he yelled. Spark tried to keep going, but even without his driver able to apply his brakes, he found himself going slower and slower and slower, till they were stuck, fouling the main line. Spark's driver found a nearby telephone while his stoker went to check the light from behind them. When they returned, his stoker had bad news. "There was an axle box that ran hot and caught fire," he explained. "I've got the fire dealt with, but it's still jammed." His driver interrupted. "I've called dispatch and we've got a clear line ahead, but we've blocked another train. I don't think we can back up." They turned to Spark. "The gradient here is rather steep. I think it would be better for us to call help." "Driver," Spark responded, "get some sound out and lay it on the rails. I'm not giving up here." His driver obliged. Once everything was ready, Spark started off. With fierce slipping, Spark forced himself forwards, fighting for traction. Finally, the sand started doing its work. His driver and stoker were astonished as the long, heavy train began to move again. Spark heaved the train over the crest of the hill and finally gained speed once more. It was nearly daylight by the time Spark made it to the other railway. He switched his consist onto its siding and made the trek back light engine. Everyone at the sheds was asleep. Spark did his best to be silent as he turned round and slinked back into his berth. But a certain someone noticed him. Stash came out from her siding. "So, how was your trip?" Spark remained silent. Well, continued Stash, the other engines may not have seen you. But I certainly did. And just like that, it was silent for the rest of the night.